Hello and welcome to the Emo Social Club podcast, broadcasting to you live from emosocialclub.tv. I, this week, probably for the last time, am Brian.
And I, this week, probably forever going forward, am Lizzie.
I'm kidding. I'll be back every week. You can't get rid of me. This is the Emo Social Club podcast, the podcast about music and news and media and the arts and theater and opera and
Oh, really?
No, I'm adding that in actually.
Okay. I didn't know you were such an opera enthusiast.
There's just not a lot going on right now, so I don't really have a lot of opera and theater to talk about. But I also, under normal circumstances, would have very little to talk about with theater and opera.
Okay.
To be fair, it's not like I'm hiding this secret opera obsession, an opera obsession, if you will.
I don't know if I like that.
I'm writing it down. I'm saving it for later. I'm going to use that joke at parties. On tonight's episode, we're talking about podcast networks because we found out that a lot of our favorite music podcasts all signed to the same one. And we want to dive a little deeper and talk about that. We talk a bit about John Boyega and his Star Wars commentary. And also, what does it mean to be punk? And should anybody ever give a fuck? And the answer
Those
might
are all
surprise
very
you.
good questions.
The answer may surprise you. We also, of course, give out new music recommendations. And by we, I always mean Lizzie. But first, before we get into all of that, Lizzie, what's going on with you this week?
Nothing too crazy this week, at least for me for once, but I'm going to do a quick shout out to NBC because my brother is going to be on Ultimate Ninja Warrior when this comes out Monday night on September 7th.
Oh, shit.
The new season airs. So you can also see me jumping around like a crazy person in my living room because they zoomed us in for maximization of social distancing.
Maximization.
So, yes, maximization of social distancing. So whether or not you watch it, tune in and cheer on hashtag Team Cam and wear red because that's his favorite color and that's the color we wear. So yeah, because he is very athletic and can do that type of stuff and I cannot. And then eventually I started filming a how to make your own patches, aka art patches that we are making for everybody here at the Emo Social Club. aka cult members, and they can pick those up once I eventually make them, but you'll be able to see the process because I haven't seen an updated how to make a DIY punk patch video that has come out in anything less than the last 5 years.
Fantastic.
So hopefully we can get that out. And I'm just reminded how much I hate looking at my face talking and editing. It's different when you edit your own voice. You don't have to look at your face.
You got to get over it. No. And stop making
what
that
about
noise.
you? What about you, Brian?
I don't have much going on either. The Twitch streams continue as they have until I get a job. They will continue going forward that way. Every morning around 11:30 a.m. I'm playing video games. Monday through Friday, I should say. Saturday, Sunday, I take, it's the days of rest and days of recover from hangovers. Next week, starting Monday, Labor Day, a day of labor, I will be starting the Resident Evil series, starting from Resident Evil 0, the prequel to Resident Evil 1, based on numbers and how they work. I'll be playing 0, 1, 2, 3, the remakes, 4, and then 7, because I cannot be bothered to play 5 and 6.
We're really just jumping here.
Yeah, fuck 5 and 6, though. I've heard they're bad games.
Okay.
On Thursdays, we have this, obviously. You're hopefully checking us out on the Thursdays, side-eye. And on Fridays, we have our DJ happy hour, emo happy hour. We've been jamming to the bops. We've been trying to promote Hypa as hard as we fucking can. We just want to make
absolutely no reason other than the fact that it's truly chaotic.
It's the greatest song of 2020 in a year when we needed great songs.
It makes people want to disrespect Craig's house, his apartment.
Yep. It's all we need. All we needed for you to give to you. All we need for you to give back to us. Come to the streams. We will hopefully be doing some other stuff soon in the future if we plan it. I'm doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get there. So just you fucking wait, you jerks. If you want to be notified when we go live, if you want to be notified of all the stuff that we're about, we have a Discord full of Discord.
Literally.
It is emosocial.club/Discord. You can also find the link anywhere on any of our social medias. And let us know in there what you think. Also join that if you want to get one of those patches, because I think that's going to be the main place that we are trying to promote those patches and try to send them out to everybody.
Yes, they are going to be handmade with my own 2 hands and my brother, because I'm not allowed to use an X-Acto blade.
About the shark object thing. Anyway, check us out on Discord, and you'll be notified when we go live from there as well. But with that, let's get into the news.
So when we look at podcasts, there's this thing called podcast networks, which I remember asking Brian, and neither of us really knew what the hell that was necessarily.
I mean, I understand it from the context of a network, a record label, a group of people that are, I guess, working with, marketing, managing, helping to progress a podcast, I'm assuming. You tell me.
Yeah, it's pretty much that. So what kind of got us thinking about it was that another indie music pod, Fly on the Call, got signed to the new Sound Talent Media Network, which also has Peer Pleasure and Punk Rock MBA on there as well. And it literally just came out, like, when we were going to post this on Monday. I think it came out about 4 or 5 days ago.
Yeah.
Brand spanking new.
Everybody was announcing it. Peer Pleasure, which we both listened to, me and Lizzie have both listened to, they also signed to Equal Vision Records, which is that's a weird announcement. Like, what are we... You're signing to a network, which kind of made sense. You know, it was a lot of music podcasts. It was, like Lizzie mentioned, and then a bunch of bands podcasts. And it made sense as like, hey, we're starting this music podcast network. We can work with all these musicians and help them to improve the podcast, help them to get guests or whatever. But then Peer Pleasure also mentioned they signed to Equal Vision, and that just, what? Like, what? What?
Yeah, that's the thing I still don't really get, because I don't think we've seen podcasts in general sign to like any type of record labels ever, as far as I can think of, honestly.
No.
So I have no idea like what that entails. Does that mean they get like first dibs on like bands and new releases? That's the only thing I could really think of, honestly.
Yeah, aside from like, I saw that they did a total like rebranding. Everything looks different on all their stuff. They have a new artwork. And then they put out an episode with Chino of the Deftones. Deftones. There's no the in their name. Don't make that mistake. And please don't come at me in the comments. There are no comments on a podcast. It's called Twitter.
No, they're gonna, yeah, and then they have to come at me, and I'm gonna be like, listen, I don't know, I get it, you're like mid-30s, early 40s, and you're sad about shit, like, whatever, step off.
I wanted to tell you that on your most recent podcast, you called them the Deftones. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. It's actually just Deftones. I won't be listening to any other episodes. Thank you.
Yeah, guy who exactly is that guy. That guy is out there. That guy lives.
Oh, you know he's there. And he
that
has
guy
like
is waiting.
30 different like Deftones and Metallica and Fugazi and God knows what else shirts. And he just rotates through them. And it's like, hey, dude. Hey,
he
dude,
absolutely does.
Good over there?
He's not good. He's doing poorly.
Probably not.
So they did that. They put out that episode. They had like a lot more stuff on Instagram than I've seen in the past. They put up somebody did an animated video of a clip from the episode, which I thought was really interesting that like they'd never done that before and somebody had done artwork for it. So I don't know. Clearly it's something. Clearly it's something that they would do with bands too. But I wonder. I don't know. I wonder what that looks like in the future. I literally don't know. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, it's literally, I think this is just a brand new media. And I think that because when you look at record labels specifically, they kind of have more free reign than like traditional corporate entities that do have like media networks in general. Because I know that a lot of like broadcasting stations have been starting to subsidize and buy smaller like podcast production studios to, you know, one, get reputability, and then two, be able to be like, oh, hey, we want to produce these other podcasts, and then just throw it at whoever's working and just call it a day.
Sure.
But because of that, because they already have certain like higher up monies already allocated to certain things, and they already have like a business plan, and because it's corporate, you have to kind of go through like 6 people to get one fucking answer.
God damn it.
It's going to be harder for them to like move around and adjust, especially because they also have to think of like overhead, where a lot of these other record labels are so small that their overhead could be pretty non-existent if they're working from home, especially right now, or if they have like a small office space where it's only, you know, maybe them and like 5 to 10 other people, compared to having a whole company that's spread out nationwide where you have at least like anywhere from 60 to 100 people per office that you're in, plus, you know, running everything else. So I think that record labels, they're kind of like jumping on because they're seeing that people are listening more to podcasts, even though everyone's at home. Listenership has been going up because also there are people starting to go out, or people are starting to have to like commute to work again, or work to school.
Yeah.
So you're always going to be listening to it. And if you're listening to it and you're listening to that, and then maybe it's like in some weird playlist mix or something, and then it comes onto an Equal Vision band that you really like right after you finish listening to like Peer Pleasure or something, and it just kind of goes along with it, people might vibe with that. And that's like kind of a cool experiment. I think that if we kind of let Equal Vision kind of be like the test subjects in a way, I feel that at least by the end of the year in like December, and probably at the beginning of the new year in 2021 in January, I think that we're going to see a lot more record labels kind of jumping on this ship, to be 100% honest.
Yeah, I could see it too. I wonder a little bit if like, yeah, every company has like a marketing budget, right? And podcasts tend to strike me, especially music podcasts, maybe not ours so much, but
we'll get there. It's fine.
We'll get there. They're very much a marketing wing. Even outside of podcasting, let's just say like a show like Hot Ones, you know, is just an interview show. And while it is an interview show, and the show itself is to bring guests on, talk about the guests themselves, it is also that you get guests on those episodes when they have something to promote, when there's money that they need to make, basically.
Right.
That's a big thing of it, because if you are putting your artists out there to be interviewed on these episodes, on these shows, on whatever, to only when they have something to promote, then of course you have to find these venues. You have to have PR people that can put them on these things. Well, now here's an idea. What if you had a bunch of podcasts? So like, what if you found a bunch of different music podcasts that all brought on very similar artists, very similar musicians, and you thereby just created your own marketing wing without the need to go through a PR person and agents to get that person on the thing? This is my first thought when I saw it, was that maybe there's just a marketing side to it, where now we don't have to do this extra step of getting somebody on a podcast, on an episode of this show. We just have the shows. We just have the podcasts. Like, they're already talking to our musicians anyway.
Right. And I think, because going back to like what exactly is like a podcast network to begin with, is that it's basically your own like PR management firm is like the easiest way to explain. It's just like, hey, you probably have better access to ad revenue. You have better access to your own management team. So instead of you handling everything, you kind of you can decide if you want to handle it. Obviously depends on whatever network you're at. Everyone's different. But you can be like, oh, I want these people to be booked. And you can communicate that to whoever's doing booking if it's a large enough network. Or you can say, hey, I would really like to interview these people, maybe in like this genre of music. And they'd be like, oh, okay, I have those contacts that I can then give to you because you're a part of this new network family grouping. And then also with ad revenues, if you have just that basic branding, like if you say, hey, I'm with Equal Vision now, and like say Vans comes up, they're like, hey, we want to be a sponsor, and like we'll put a 30-second ad in the middle and at the end of every episode, and then you figure out pay per click and how much streaming and then numbers and math, and I can't do that. Someone else can do that for me, which is great about being part of a podcast network.
You have somebody to do the math for you.
Yes,
it's literally just a bunch of people to do math for you. That's
that's all I ever wanted in life, is someone else to do the math for me that I can't do.
Math is not that hard if you have a calculator.
It is hard. I got the calculator on my phone, but it's like that, and then also just like having the credibility and notoriety of your show too. So that's kind of what it is. It's basically like, hey, I hired a marketing firm. In some ways more than one. It's just for podcasting. So it's like if you take a marketing firm and a record label and you mash it together and it's talking.
Yeah.
And that's what a podcast network is.
That's
and
what
then,
yeah.
And then that's how it's made. And then you can also like cross promo on like if that network has so many other pods, they probably will just like have a deal with everybody to be like, okay, hey, you're on here. That means like every other episode you have to promote this other podcast that's on here. And it's usually, from what I've kind of heard in other podcasts who are a part of their own podcast network, they will usually promote things that are pretty similar to whatever the genre that they're doing.
Yeah.
So it won't be like, oh, hey, we're doing like our podcast, the Emo Social Club, and they're like, here's a Yeehaw Country podcast. It's usually not like that.
We have a lot of overlap with the countries.
The countries, yeah.
The countries.
The yees and the ha's.
When I say ye, you say ha. I didn't fucking say ye.
Oh my God.
That was Casey Musgraves at Coachella last year, or is it last year?
Yeah,
I don't know.
year.
Time's a flat circle.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. We all live in our own bubble.
Sure do. It's fucking great.
Oh yeah, but that's what podcast networks are, and it's kind of cool to see the new ways that they're coming out with it. And then it also gets you thinking, because I know that also, shout out to our friend of the pod, James Shotwell. He's announced his second season of High Notes. It's coming out in December. So that's pretty cool. But it kind of made me think, because while that podcast is a part of Holix, the one of the companies that he's associated with, it's interesting to see, because say if like we created like other offshoots, like we each say, like hypothetically, we each did like our own independent podcast. So it wasn't specifically maybe music related, but it was something that we like to do and we were just doing it.
Right.
Then like, okay, we can obviously put it on the Emo Social Club, obviously, because why not? You know, free promo all around.
Free promo.
But it's like, okay, so what happens when you have these other entities? Is that how one would decide to create their own independent podcast network? Because I know, of course, it's going to come up when I listen to My Favorite Murder, the podcast, those Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hartzark, they created their Exactly Night podcast, right? Podcast network. So that's their own entity, but it only was created, I think, because they each started to say, oh, I want to do my own like separate podcast that it wasn't directly with what they were doing on the show. Like one of them like drives around in a car and they talk about whatever the fuck it is with whoever they have as a guest, for example. And it's like, well, is that where we may see more independent podcast networks come up? Because I know that they're out there, but I don't feel that a lot of people understand the full benefit of it. Or I feel that, especially right now, with how many people have like lost their fucking jobs.
Right.
Because of that pandemic.
Please stop looking at me like that.
I'm not looking at you.
I know.
Hey, I'm with you halfway on that at least, so
exactly.
I get it. Like, I think people might have a distrust in like corporations overall in general too, because there's, you know, shit's hitting the fan. Don't blame you.
Good.
We're on the same page.
Hate them.
And I think that's why people are going to say like, oh, screw jumping on with somebody unless they're going to offer you something monetarily. Like Joe Rogan signed a huge podcast deal with Spotify, and only Spotify carries the Joe Rogan podcast exclusively now because it was like $100 million, I think. It's a huge signing.
It was a huge amount because it's like the biggest podcast in the world. Like, obviously. Yeah.
And I know because my dad was listening to it last night. He's like, yeah, you can watch the video on Spotify too. And I was like, what? So that's, unless they're offering you a lot of money, but then you also have to be like a really good podcast that brings a lot of streaming revenue and like just downloads and everything like that.
Right.
I think it's going to be a huge new market that I think is going to become, let's be honest, podcasting has become super saturated lately because everyone's one at home. Two, it's really easy
to own a MacBook. If you own a MacBook, you can make a podcast. Actually, if you just own an iPhone now, you can make a podcast.
Yeah, I was going through like different murder pods, and I found this one, and it was from, I think, like an Instagram influencer.
Terrible.
So I'm that person who's like, I'm going to judge a book by its cover, and I do that with fucking everything, and I know it's really bad, but I really like the podcast where I'm like, oh, that's cute. Let me listen to it. I was like, wow, this is fucking awful. I'm saying you can do it if you want to do it. But at a certain point, you're going to have to realize if you suck, you got to change.
Mm-hmm. You got to put time and effort into it. That's not me being shitty.
That's just how it is. As somebody who's worked in media and in different podcasts, you just have to realize sometimes you're going to suck. And I think people are just going to get fed up and they just want to be their own bosses. But at the same time, it's going to become like a huge, like, popularity contest, unfortunately, as we've seen with almost anything else that becomes popular, especially in media. It's like somebody could be really good at what they do but don't get a lot of streams or listeners for whatever the reason. But if somebody who's popular, say somebody in like the music scene who's like really high ranking or they're like really well known in the music community, they start doing podcasts, but they don't have like the structure. They don't have the format. Maybe they don't have the best voice. Okay, some people have like a voice for radio.
Hi,
some people have a face for TV. Sometimes you just don't have the voice.
Yeah.
And you have to like accept that. Those 4 chairs are not turning around.
Oh, wow.
For no one.
Oh, wow. Oh,
so you kind of listen. Sometimes you listen to people's voice and you're like, please stop.
Please stop.
You can do so much better as a voiceover character, but not as a podcaster. They're 2 separate things.
Oh Lord.
But I think it's gonna become like a popularity contest eventually, probably in like the winter, spring, once things start to ramp up a little bit and people start to get their footing, whether we're after COVID and have a vaccine or if we have just kind of adapted and adjusted to the new normal, whichever it really is. And it's gonna be, popularity contests. So it's great because it's super accessible. And what you always want for media is for it to be accessible to everybody. However, the negative side of that is that there's going to be way too many people in it. And then possibly the people who are producing this content, it could be, it's not very good, but because they have their own personal following, it's going to get bigger. Or maybe it could even be, if you're looking at like newsy podcasts, they could be spreading fake news or propaganda or not accurately reporting.
An opinion podcast, not a news podcast.
Exactly. And I guess if you were to be on a podcast network, you kind of have some checks and balances there. So I could understand in the long run if, 1, you get a lot of money, go for it. I get it. 2, if you kind of don't want to do the legwork and you just want to be the host and you're like, yes, I'm going to record, save my file, send it off, and somebody else is going to do whatever I type out to do and done. That's cool. I get it. I have gone to school with people who are like that. You do you, I guess. But I think podcasters are really cool, and I'm really interested to see how Equal Vision is going to work with peer pressure and how this one new Sound Talent Media Network, because I think this is like one of the first ones that is specific to more of like the alternative music scene. I know they do have a couple like outliers of like, oh, this is just like normal kind of like talk radio type of jargon, I think. But I think it's really cool that they're kind of infiltrating this area a little bit more. So I really want to see how it kind of gets worked out, because I know there's a lot of music podcasts. So I wonder how it's gonna factor out for people like us who are, we're dangling, we're swimming along. We'll see if we ever get picked up,
famous and popular.
If we either one get picked up, we say fuck it and we make our own podcast network, or I don't know, it could just merge and form into something completely different. I think that's the kind of the cool and frustrating thing of new media, but it always kind of keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, it does. Even the way you're describing it sounds like a record label. So like there's a part of me that's like, well, all that Equal Vision did here was see that they are a record label and a podcast is just the new band. So this is my personal experience with the record label, which wasn't really a label. It was just kind of like some guy who's like, I like these bands, I'm going to put out your music. And then he didn't like that I didn't like the music video that he did for us. Oh. And I was like, that's... Sorry.
Is that the one you always play on Fridays?
No. That was before we did that.
Okay.
He did a music video for another song, and I was like, it's not really our style. Like we were pretty like dark and edgy, and like a lot of our videos were very like dark rooms and then like lasers.
Of course,
and
as
shit.
you would in the early mid 2000s. Of course,
that was 2011, 2012,
mid 2000s. Yeah.
Mid 2000 teens, 10,000s.
Oh God!
Anyway,
please don't do that. Don't say things like that.
So in that setup, it was like, these are all these bands I like. These are all these artists that I believe in, and I want to help them to get to where they want to go. This was not there was no money. Like we weren't getting paid for being on the label, and we weren't going to necessarily like get paid for our music streams like through them. It's not like we take this cut of all the stuff you do. It's still, you own everything. Still you're in charge of it, but they are just going to help with the marketing, the videos, all this kind of stuff. Basically all we really got help with was that music video, and then getting in the studio with a guy that he knew, which was great. The guy was great, and he, I think, made us better than we broke up. So it was like, all right, well, we can't keep that running, so we might as well just stop being a band. But I think in general, you use the fact that you have multiple artists on a label to generate income for the label in order to benefit the label to put more people on the label. Basically, I understand that's like I just repeated the same words over and over again, but it's like that's the self-sustaining nature of it. Like you sign a large band, let's say a Day to Remember. And because A Day to Remember is on your label, you now can have much smaller bands that need a little bit more time to grow to get that opportunity. But A Day to Remember is bringing in so much money that like you already have enough money to kind of put into these other bands. So you pay these bands to do these things. You put the money into the investment of creating this band. It's that kind of thing. Part of me thinks that it's like, that's exactly the same thing we're doing here. Like, hey, we've got all these big podcasts, and we're going to put them all on this network, and the network will accumulate some money from ad shares, from just, I don't know. I don't really know where they're going to make most of their money from. I assume it's all advertising. Like
it's
anybody,
usually ads.
Yeah. So if they reach out and they're like, yo, we have this ad, it's going to be put on your show, and they just take that ad and then take a certain percentage of the money, they pay out the host. I'm assuming there's a lot less overhead like to being a podcast than a band.
I feel like most people, especially now, they just said, fuck it, I'm work from home. So like you live in your home? Yeah.
Like you are literally recording this with the same equipment now that you're on a network or a label or whatever. You don't have to step it up because most people are already listening to the podcast and that as it is. And at the very least, it's like, okay, cool. We now got you a $400 mic and a $200 interface, and go. And that's it. And it's like, you don't need anything else. You still have your same computer or laptop or whatever, like still recording the same way. It's so low overhead to create the actual product. There's more of the product. It's happening weekly or bi-weekly or whatever the frequency of these specific podcasts are. It's way more often than a band releasing an album, that's for sure. So I can only imagine that like when you're talking about the resources that are being put into it, the network benefits off podcast much more potentially than it will of a band. I just made myself scared for bands, but also you don't need a fucking label. Podcasts might need a network.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you are a podcast, again, in an oversaturated market, sometimes maybe it might be better.
Yeah.
Just to get your leg up. But I will say a lot of people are usually pretty hyped to be on a podcast in general because it is still kind of new and exciting for a lot of people.
And it's marketing. It's chatting with another person, which we all want
miss.
that really.
We all need.
We all need that a lot right now. And
plus it's not like you necessarily always have to look good. Like we live stream, so we do something way different than a lot of people.
We look fantastic.
Look awesome.
Is that my camera right there? Is that my camera? I look great.
That's what our family friend's daughter, she's like 3, she just does this.
7 people listening to our podcast are like, I hate this. These guys got so big talking about these media networks. They're so popular and big. I hate them now. It's like we're not anything, guys. We're faking it till we make it.
Yeah, we're just here trudging along. If you know some,
we don't think we're that good looking. Listen,
we're decent.
We're doing the work. Lizzie, I see that we're going to talk a little bit here about how one would get onto one. If we were to want to. So let's take us as a hypothetical. If we're like, hey,
yes,
we want to be on one of these networks, which, we as a podcast would love to grow, would love to be much bigger than we are. I don't necessarily know what that means because we are still just doing this out of our rooms here. We now both have full-fledged studios at our respective homes, so that's nice.
Yeah, I have. I just got some furniture for it.
Yeah.
And then I said my studio. My friends were like, "Did you move?" And I'm like, "When I say studio, I mean the podcast studio in my parents' home."
So now it's like you're gonna host guests in there or something.
No, that's like sit here, but 6 feet fucking away from me.
That is correct. Safety first.
Exactly. Wear your mask, everybody, please.
Yeah. Please come.
Yeah.
Please don't talk to us about that shit on Twitter. Because that's Lizzie, and I don't want to put her through that because it's bullshit.
No, please. I go through enough bullshit that just by doom scrolling, I don't need any more.
So true. All right, Lizzie, let's say that you and I wanted to take the next step in our podcasting adventure. We want to break out of this small podcasting town that we've been in. We're going to leave and start off on our own path. And
I hate this.
Take this adventure. So, let's say that's happening. How would we? What would we be looking to do if that was the case? So
this is traditionally, and things have changed. So I actually snagged this from, I think it was called, improvepodcast.com, and it kind of details it out. So one of the ways would be the number of downloads per episode, which obviously is hugely important. You don't want to invest in something that isn't getting a lot of downloads, obviously. It would be the same way as being like, are we selling enough of this inventory? No, then we're just not going to put our money into it. How many streams your album's getting? How many monthly listeners do you have? Like that kind of stuff for a band? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, pretty much. And then they're saying here that you should have at least 1,000 episodes, which, again, I think this is a little outdated, but this was like the most concise. Oh, we are putting out step by step an episode an hour just to get to that number. Could you imagine? All the 8-minute episodes they're putting out. I don't think you can even host more than 200 podcast episodes on Spotify. Really? To be 100% honest. 200? I was seeing some people saying that they had to take down because they were hitting the 200 mark, and they're like, okay, you have to start removing certain ones. And I'm like, oh, the Emo Social Club podcast is officially moving to Stitcher Radio. So we'll catch you over on. No, we're staying on everything that you can find. On everything. We're staying on everything, man. The other thing is the frequency. So how many episodes are you putting out and how frequently? So like us, we usually do one a week. So obviously, sometimes we take a week off for whatever the reason. I'm real tired sometimes. Yeah, sometimes we're just really fucking tired. Or sometimes I have to go to fucking work. So I'm just so tired. It happens.
I'm old.
It happens.
And I'm tired.
Listen, I'm mid-20s. Brian's almost dead.
I feel it, man. There's just nothing left to do here. Keep going. I'm getting excited about us never getting onto a network.
So there's also revenue sharing. So I just copy and paste this. So it's basically you have to give the percentage of the earned revenue to the podcast network. So you have to be making enough money. So ideally, we would be getting some type of money already in some capacity, not maybe thousands of dollars, but that would obviously make us more profitable and marketable to certain people.
Dollars.
Tens of dollars.
Tens of monies.
But that it was also be looking at like the oversight. So I'm quoting this. Control Podcast Network demands to make sure it doesn't violate any ad partners requirements. So that's why like when you have like ads, you'll usually ask whoever you're working with to write a script or have bullet points.
Yeah.
And if they like, you always hear like the HelloFresh ones. So say you did HelloFresh, but then you had like, what is it, like Blue Plate or some shit like that?
Yeah.
If you had like their competitor come to you and say like, hey, we want to do like the same thing, you can't do that because that's competitors.
Right.
So if you had like a podcast network, they would kind of take the care of that for you. If you didn't have that sense, which I hope you fucking do.
I mean, read a contract
to
if you
not
have
do
one.
that. Please have, if there's a contract ever involved, just always have like your family lawyer or somebody who you know in law school. It seems, I feel like everyone just decided to go to law school recently because we got time.
Good for you.
You probably know at least one of them. Hit them up. Have them look at the contract.
Look at the contract.
If you don't have a family lawyer or you don't just know somebody, I don't know. Always have somebody else look at a contract. Basically, don't just sign. That goes for anything. Anything.
That is very true at all times.
Yeah. Creative control. Usually they'll just let you do whatever within reason. So you couldn't like go on and say like, I tried HelloFresh and it sucks when they're like, your ad component. So they might just try to like read your scripts or ask you and do meetings with you to make sure you don't do dumb shit like that.
That makes me think of like, an Alex Jones type character, just a real
Jesus
monster
Christ.
who's like,
I feel so bad for whoever is like, could you imagine being Alex's Jones, like anything, man?
But like
PR, like fucking handler. Like anyone in his family who's related to him, I couldn't imagine.
Well, his own family has disowned him, but it's somebody who's doing the things and making the money off of doing those terrible things. Like it's part of the brand, obviously. I think that. Then you would say like, well, if you had an Alex Jones, but you were advertising for like people who were like, well, that guy like clearly is an asshole. You wouldn't be like, no, I want to talk to you about HelloFresh. This is really nice. They serve you food. Anyway, you go check them out. Here's the link. Now let's talk about why these masks don't actually help and how the coronavirus is faked. It's like then you'd be like, hey, we're going to lose that ad. So maybe
don't say
stop.
that.
Maybe like cut that shit. Or then you realize like we only want ads that will advertise on a show that talks about that. So
it's also like kind of like having a handler in a sense. In like like not in a bad way, like, oh, I'm like my brother's keeper, some crazy shit like that.
Sure.
It's more of like, oh, hey, don't say head ass shit over here. That's gonna ruin your credibility. Unless obviously we know
credibility is
like,
not your thing.
Yeah, as we've seen. Unless you're with like some sort of like right or leftist or whatever network. I don't know if there are any. I wouldn't doubt that there are. Please don't listen. Just do your own extensive research. I'm so tired.
Yeah, just don't stop. Please stop.
Just look at everything. Just spread it out like you're on a conspiracy theory thing, and you're like, "There's this."
You know what?
There's this. Don't start talking conspiracy theories, though. Please do not do that.
We're not educating people today. You know what? Be smarter. Fuck off. What else? What else is there to get
the
on?
The last thing is like what I mentioned earlier of like cross promotion. So you can be like, say I'm on like the My Favorite Murder podcast, and they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna talk about this other adjacent show. They have one with like detectives on it who are like, oh, I went around and I investigated these old things."
Yeah.
So they would have that smaller show, because I think that show's relatively newer. I think they only have like a couple seasons out. So they would put that smaller show and they would advertise it on their main larger podcast reach. So that would also be a good thing. So say that, hypothetically speaking, we get on the Sound Talent Media Network and they say, okay, Punk Rock MBA, I need you to put this ad promo for Emo Social Club somewhere in your lineup.
We're coming for you.
Let's go.
We're about to start advertising exclusively on your show.
That's it.
Finn
Let's
McKenty,
go.
I see you. I know you. I want what you got.
He's sending you a strongly worded email.
Finn McKenty somewhere is like, I don't even know this guy. Couldn't really care less. Seems fine. I don't know. I guess I'm okay with Ronnie Radke.
Oh, God.
So that's like I've only watched a few videos of Punk Rock MBA, but that was one of them, just to see what he had to say. And actually, he gave some fair points.
No, I know we've had conversations with a lot of people too about it. We get it. We're not going to get more into this.
Finn McKenty does good videos. Enough said.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, but that's like what you would kind of want to consider when going to a podcast network. So if you kind of want more structure and you're like really taking it seriously, maybe at a certain point you just say, okay, I'm going to just try. Now the application process, don't know how that works. I haven't talked to anybody yet who has kind of done so, or if they had been approached by it. But I assume it's kind of like a normal record label. You just kind of send like an inquiry and like your media kit essentially, or like a press release or something, and say, hey, this is this. What's up? Let's talk.
What
if
up?
Not, cool.
You like what we got going on here at the podcast? You like the podcast?
You
anyway,
send it like that.
I'm not the person that emails in this grouping. It's definitely Lizzie who emails. She's the girl who emails.
I write nice emails.
I write good emails. I'm just.
You do write good emails.
I'm not for this. So yeah,
but
maybe
that's the podcast that works.
Yeah, so maybe you'll see us on one day. If you're not downloading
maybe we
our
make
episodes,
our own or something. I don't know.
Who knows? We don't have any money to do that.
We don't. I mean, I guess you don't need money. You can just say it's here. I guess. I don't know. I really don't know how that works too much either.
When we figure it out, you'll be the first ones to know.
When I'm able to get into one of the MBA business classes, if I'm ever allowed to, then I can tell you.
The Punk Rock MBA? Anyway, Finn McKenty, we're coming for you.
much cheaper than the actual tuition MBA.
Finn McKenty, this is your warning. There's a GQ article that came out this week. I believe it was Thursday. So Monday, Thursday. Always got to do that mental math of how many days it's been since we record this. And then how many days it is until...
we had that podcast network, we wouldn't have to do the math.
Wouldn't have to do that. The math is on the network. So GQ article with John Boyega, star of The Force Awakens and other movies that are non-Star Wars. It's always one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I know all the movies you've been in, but it's pretty much just the Marvel or Star Wars movies that I remember. It's the best I got, man. But so there's an article that John Boyega commented on his place in the Star Wars universe. He's done. I mean, his movies are done. He's done the 3 movies he was going to do. So he's no longer under contract to, only speak positively. Be nice to your boss. Be nice to your intergalactic overlords. So he got to kind of like open up and be free with his words on there. And it's not news that we're breaking that obviously the Star Wars universe fans are toxic as all hell and treated especially the cast members of color like shit and treated them very poorly in internet communities. Apparently, though they aren't racist, they just don't want Disney and these large companies putting people of color in these movies because of not racism, but it must be something. It's just definitely not racism. So it's something.
Yeah, it's I've always heard the argument of, well, we want people to see themselves in it. And it's like, hey, there's more people who aren't just white out there.
I want to see myself in every movie, not just most of them. So he comments kind of on this, the backlash that he experienced from doing the movies, and how he received a bunch of hate mail, a bunch of death threats before The Force Awakens even came out. And the story about even The Last Jedi was that there was the character, I don't remember the character's name in the movie, but Kelly Marie Tran is the actress. Yeah, Rose, that's right. But she had her part in the last movie, fucking Rise of Skywalker. That's the one, right? Sure. I didn't see it honestly. As a big Star Wars fan, I was I'm good.
I went by myself to the $5 movie theater in the middle of the fucking day, and like every single seat was taken. I had to sit in between like these weird frat bros, and then like this weird like dad and son mix thing, and I was just like, Star Wars.
Hey, I'm here for the movie. Thank you.
I'm here.
So her part was very reduced in the third film. After the second film, when they just sort of went all out against her character at all, having a woman of color in the movie just sort of made fans go, well, what the fuck is this? I hate it. And John Boyega's commentary is basically to say, you knew what to do with character like Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, you knew what to do with your white characters. And so you pushed them more to the forefront, even though in the first movie you had Finn as a major character. And you decided that, no, we don't really know what to do with you. I don't want to blame it on the writers being white or not having resources. I kind of want to put this on the fans and the backlash against the movies, and Disney saying, we have these 3 movies coming out. We have the Star Wars trilogy. These are continuations of one of the biggest franchises of all time. We need them to be successful, and so therefore we need to make hard decisions. But it does seem like Disney couldn't stand up for their characters of color, and they just sort of let them fall by the wayside or push them to the sides while allowing their white characters, who are basically just the same fucking characters as every other movie, come back to the forefront. I don't think it worked. The fact that I didn't see the last movie of a series that I actually really liked. By the way, I'll have the hard conversation with you about how The Last Jedi and Rogue One are the best 2 Star Wars movies of all of them.
I'm glad that you're not an anti-Rogue One person.
Rogue One was one of the best movies of the series.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Good. We're on the same page. Great. Awesome.
The Force Awakens.
Continue the podcast.
Yeah. The Force Awakens is just episode 4. It's a repeat of that. The prequels are all, boring as fuck. And the original trilogy is just like, it's aged, but I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's like, it's aged.
It's just aged for what it is compared to now. Like you go see Star Wars now and you're like, holy shit, the visuals. You watch like old Star Wars and you're like, oh,
like, haha, cool. The acting is just what it is, man. Mark Hamill is doing his damnedest, and Mark Hamill became a much better actor. I'm not even talking shit about Mark Hamill.
Yeah, no, Mark Hamill's fucking great.
Yeah, he really like got better over time. Harrison did his Ford. It's, he's
Indiana Jones. He's great.
So I will say that those are the best movies of all of them, and you can hate me for it. I don't really give a shit. But the fact that they are all the same movie, and the fact that they just wanted to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, I think leads to this toxicity from fans, allowing them to dictate how the movies are run, how the movies are made, what the characters look like, what the people in the movies look like. And inevitably that is going to show itself in a racist and sexist way. And I think John Boyega was very A, smart, and B, brave to call them out, because Disney is... Considering that Disney seems to think that they are being very woke and they are trying to have as much wokeness in their movies going forward as possible, and he is basically able to call them out on their performative, their issue of being performative and not actually living up to the standards that they're setting for themselves, I think it was pretty good. I do think it is not surprising at all that immediately after this article came out, Disney's like, Mandalorian trailer, here you go. we've got this new trailer for the Mandalorian. You like that baby
and they're
Yoda,
like, guess
right?
what? There's so many baby Yodas in it.
You got this. You like that baby Yoda, right?
You like the one? We have more. Baby
we have
Yoda.
many baby Yodas. So,
and then they're like, hey, guess what? We also have Mulan, but you have to pay $30 to watch it on Disney Plus until December 4th. And it's like, you know what? It comes out December 4th then.
I'll see you on December 4th.
It comes out December 4th then.
Interesting technique, Cotton. Let's see how it plays out. I might watch Mulan. I might pay for it to watch with a group, not by myself.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing too. Do you rent it and then do you own it, or are you only renting it and then it's like only for a few days? Is the real question here.
That's a strong question. I wish
it is
that I had.
I don't think anybody has really
answers
the answer for it either.
Please reach out to Lizzie on Twitter if you have the answer to that.
I would like to know because I did want to see the new Mulan, but I'm upset there's no Mushu.
I'm not, because he was
wow.
He was just a weird stereotype of the movie. I don't know.
Wow.
I'm into the fact that he's not in there and there's no music and it's all just like action oriented and making her look like a badass.
I mean, that's fair too.
Yeah. I don't know if I really have many more comments on it because I just think John Boyega is generally right about his feelings on characters of color.
I know that also when Rise of Skywalker came out, he did make a comment, as well as, I'm blanking on his name, but Poe in the movie,
Oscar Isaac,
his real name, Oscar Isaac. I knew there was an Oscar, and I just didn't know where.
Yeah.
But they were both like, there should have been more of a romance between Poe and Finn, because they showed it as more of a bromance. But I know fanfare was saying like, oh no, like they're a couple together, and I also know in the previous films too that like it was Finn and Rose. So there was also a lot of like calls of like, why can't you make this happen? Like it's kind of ridiculous. And then they cut out a lesbian kiss scene in Rise of Skywalker originally. I think in some other countries, or it was censored, and it was very quick anyway. Like it was during like the reuniting scene near the end, and it was just like a quick, I think it was literally like 5 seconds. Like you could blink and miss it and just not pay attention to it. And I feel like because of that too, they're not listening to the fans who are, those who are different races, and also those who are, wanting to see more of an expanded relationships going on. Because like, I don't want to spoil it, but also Star Wars has been out. Rise of Skywalker's
Guess
been
what?
out for
Good guys win,
year.
bad guys lose. And those bad guys can come back at any time they want to because of plot.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because Star Wars, the Force.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you have fanfare for the two main white characters, and there's so much pushing from so many people to couple them together rather than have them individually apart or have them with other people or whatever. And while I'm not like a huge fanfare person when it comes to this, but when I saw the ending of it, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of satisfied. And obviously everyone's going to have their own opinion on it.
Sure.
But when you kind of keep it going towards it, because it was there, but then you could tell it was kind of forced. It was there, but it was forced.
Sure.
Which happens a lot that we've seen with different, movies and TV shows when it comes to your favorite characters. And while I'm happy with it, obviously it could have gone completely different ways too, 100%. And those characters who fell to the wayside, like Finn, they definitely played it up like Finn was going to have like this huge revelation moment in Rise of Skywalker. And I'm just kind of sitting there waiting for it to happen. And it pretty much passes you by in the night where you just don't even realize what it is. And you just kind of have to like assume.
Yeah.
And from the first movie, I'm like, oh, fuck. Like him and Rey are going to have some type of like forced connection or like some weird connection to each other that is going to be like, oh shit, like this is crazy. And like, you just never get it. You just have him yelling Rey like for most of the fucking movie. And that's it. And then they put Rose in the fucking background and like pretty much forget about her after her and Finn were pretty much the main characters.
Yeah.
For like one whole ass movie, pretty much. It just like, if you are a dedicated Star Wars fan, you probably would have liked Rise of the Skywalker or the whole series. No way in hell would you not like it. But if you're also somebody who still kind of like looks critically at media and how like representation is, especially now in the last like 10 years, we are still like, especially in the Disney realm. Disney is such a huge conglomerate.
Correct.
And they are definitely within that fake woke category.
They
100%.
own all of you.
They own fake wokeness.
They
That's
are.
what it is.
I mean, yeah. And
trust me, as somebody who has my Disney graduation cap ears behind me right now.
Yeah, please don't put them on.
They are fake.
It's for continuity. You just can't wear them. You weren't wearing them in the rest of the episode. You can't put them on.
I know.
Now.
He yelled at me last time.
I didn't care.
But
I didn't give a shit. I don't fucking care.
But I think Disney is still catering to like, well, we're a wholesome family company, therefore we can't like have two dudes together who obviously are like more than bros. Like you can tell there's like the tension between this and this, you know? And it's the same thing with Rose. It's like, why can't you have Rose in there? Like you put her forefront for a good, 2 hours. Why can't we do it again? Like, let's mix everybody together. If the movie is fucking long, we sat through 4 hours of fucking Harry Potter. We'll do it for Star Wars. We're not incapable. You can do that.
I can't. I don't care for Harry Potter.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's fine.
That's fair.
It's just fine.
It's fine. I was never a big Harry Potter person until probably like the last 10 years. I was like, I don't like it too much, and then I was like, it's okay.
See, you're like 17.
You know what?
That's literally the majority of your life.
What really turned it for me was Robert Pattinson and what was it? The cup one. What's that called? I don't know.
Yeah.
I never read the Harry Potter books. I tried to read the Harry Potter books when I was a kid, and then my great grandma told me that it was of the devil, so I couldn't read it. So there was also that.
And then you read it harder. Then you read it even more.
Well, I just read vampire, so really no one really won here.
No one wins.
No one wins.
If only your parents let you read Harry Potter. I do think that it is interesting when you look at how a movie like Black Panther was so big for this sense of wokeness for Marvel, for Disney, for big superhero movies. Not to say that that's a bad thing. I don't necessarily fall into that wokeness is a problem. I care if you are doing it for money and performance and not actually, let me take that back. Most everything,
humanitarian.
Yeah, most everything is performative. Like you can't say that something is performative. You can only say that something is performative without any meaning or intent behind it to do something positive. You could just say that it's performative for the sake of making money and looking good in the public eye, but not being performative to actually do the works that you say you're going to do. So saying that something is performative is not necessarily to say that it's bad, because everything inherently is performative if it's for other people. So, and rant on that. But now, of course, with Chadwick Boseman's death, we have to talk about like the impact of having a black superhero on screen for all of these kids of color who are watching this happen and saying, I can do this too. And then you have a movie like Star Wars, same parent company, same general like release thing and story writing and all that. And for some reason you're like, well, it's different because of the fandom, or it's different because of this. And like, I don't see the value in that kind of argument from the same company that says Chadwick Boseman really changed the world with making Black Panther, and also Finn, just like you are. We don't need John Boyega. We don't need Finn. Like, that's fine. We'll just put them to the side while we elevate the white characters in Star Wars. And that's where I think Disney's being a bit performative right now. Not to say that we shouldn't be celebrating Chadwick Boseman, because, oh God, that was really sad and that sucks. But certainly they should be aware that there is a double standard there, where how they're treating their characters who are of color and their characters who are female. I'm not even getting into the fact there's no one non-binary and there's no one in same-sex relationships. So at the very least, let's just get into the part where it's like, hey, you should promote your characters of color and make them more of a prominent fixture in your movies. And maybe eventually we'll get to the part where like two people who are the same gender kiss one another. So I'll allow you to take that time to get there real slowly over your 90 fucking years of existence on this goddamn media planet. You goddamn mouse ears. And as we try to do every week, we, parentheses, Lizzie, has some new music recommendations for you.
Yeah, words are hard. It's okay.
I'm crushing them, though. Crushing those words.
Love it. Well, if you want to stop speaking like you're in cursive, also if you like cursive and or if you like pup, you're probably going to be into the Big Easy. They're a new band with their new single coming out. It's All Fun, which comes out tomorrow on September 8th. But we do have a snippet here. Thanks to Jamie at No Earbuds for letting us play a little bit of it. And then they also have a new album coming out in October. So if you're definitely looking for a little bit more of like the aggressive kind of beach tone vibe, you're definitely going to like the Big Easy. Talk about Bring Me the Horizon,
I would.
Sir.
Also, fucking the band Bring Me the Horizon put out a new song called Obey featuring Youngblood. I watched the video. It's pretty good, although Youngblood is consistently just looking like if somebody said, I need a guy who looks like an emo at all times. They're like a cat. It's like a casting director said, I need a guy who looks like one of them emos, and Youngblood is like, yeah, I'll do that. And like Youngblood is like on his normal life is just like a regular dude who's just like, you know, just an actor
just
who's
living his life, being Youngblood, being a stock photo emo.
Exactly. He looks like he's just a fan of the music and everything. And I'm like, I'm not shaming you for that. I'm not mad at you for that. I'm just commenting about it. Anyway, Obey is a very good song. The video is great. Go check that one out for sure. It's heavy. Don't worry, guys. It's heavy.
I will say I'm not a big Bring Me the Horizon fan. I listened to it and I was like, wow, I'm really into this. Yep. I'm really into it.
It's a good track. It's a really good track.
So we're going to go back to the more unknown music. We have Barely Civil, which they are in our neighbors upstairs in Wisconsin. I meant to say up north, but they're upstairs now.
Get this band out of your house, dude. This band needs to get out of your house.
Oh no, but they have a new record coming out actually on Friday, so it's already out, so you should definitely give it a listen. It's called I'll Figure This Out. Stereo Gum actually put out an interview that had early streaming access to this album. I listened to it and it's heavy. It's definitely reminiscent of the old school emo vibes if you're looking for that too. And also just heavy guitars and some good raw vocals. Definitely a really good band. And I know that they also have been doing a lot of like spreading awareness about the protests that have been going on up in Kenosha, because obviously they're in Wisconsin and they are pretty socially active. And from what I've heard otherwise, they are a band that hits. So I definitely would say go give them a listen. A band that hits. That's all you want sometimes. And then the last thing, I actually literally just found this afternoon, the Nova Twins with their song Play Fair. It's two chicks and they have some crazy style. They're both black women in the band and they're just like going like hard rock. Like they just have a guitar and a bass.
Hell yeah.
And it's just like intense. I listen to it. I'm like, holy shit, this is so good.
Hell yeah.
So definitely give them a listen, because I literally just listened to what they had at like their top played on Spotify and I am super impressed by them. And I know that they have been doing a couple streams here and there, just from what I can gather from social media. So definitely kind of keep a lookout for it. See what's going on. So what's DIY and what's punk? Because who knows anymore? And that is the latest discourse.
So excited to introduce something that's just like, nothing matters. Who cares? Everybody's just doing whatever they want to do. What's real? What isn't? The whole world is fake. Twitter happened, though, over the weekend.
Pretty much. So if you follow Laura Jane Grace, the front woman for Against Me, you saw that she kind of retweeted this. It was like of an Archie character, Archie the comic character, dressed up in like punk attire, saying you can't be punk and be xenophobic, transphobic, racist, homophobic, the whole thing. And a bunch of people reshared it. And I guess some people on Twitter had commented otherwise.
Fantastic.
And it's great. Fucking wonderful.
Fantastic.
And there was people coming back as of today on Friday, coming back with the discourse, asking, what is punk? Is it an ideology? Is it a personality? Is it a way of life? Or is it a community? Which I feel over the last couple of years, a lot of people have been saying it's an ideology. Like, you can be punk and you don't have to dress a certain way. It's more of like what you're thinking about and what you're doing in your actions, which fair, get it.
Sure.
But I know there's a lot of people who are saying that we have to treat punk as a community or as a thriving organism that's still growing and evolving. And then I did see a lot of people start to say, okay, but we look at punk and we look at, like, say, Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, who's like now a full-blown like Boris Johnson Trump type supporter. Fantastic. Which is a big hell no. And then we know that Danzig, we all know Danzig, is also like a big Trump supporter, which is also a big hell nah. So I think because of those, it's a hell nah. I think because there's so many people who are kind of equating that and saying that we're not evolving this punk scene, but also the punk scene is expanded, but also has kind of like sectioned itself off in the music industry. Like, I can talk to people who I know who are in the punk music scene here in Chicago, and they do not usually interact with people in like the emo pop punk scene here in Chicago, and vice versa. So I think it's also talking about how if we want it to be a community, then we have to accept all the music and make it to one big community. Which means, yes, early emo, you can't be your own segregated community anymore. You have to integrate with people and learn how to play fucking nice. And learn to like Fall Out Boy. Please, just Jesus Christ, let us have some fun. Okay? Chill. Listen to An Evening Out with Your Girlfriend. You'll be fine. You'll be satisfied. I mean, you should. It's a great EP. It's just me. But Brian, what do you think about this type of discourse? Because I know that obviously you're off Twitter because there's a bunch of crazy things always going on. And the discourse is one of the most anxiety and stress inducing things to ever be seen on Twitter, especially right now.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. I don't give a shit about nothing. There has always been this conversation about music and communities around it and the things that pop up around it. And then as soon as the community exists and as soon as there are rules, as soon as people are expecting it to be one way, they're like, that's it. This is it. Anybody else who doesn't do this is out. They're not allowed. Can't be a part of it. And that's with everything. That's with every possible genre, every possible community that builds up around these things. It just ends up being that, like, you're going to gatekeep, you're going to protect. I've done it in my younger days when I was like, no, I don't want you to like take the music and take the community that like I hold dear and like make it into this other thing. Like when back back in like 2005, 06, when all the emo bands got really popular on TRL. And it's like, I don't want this to be popular. I want it to be my thing. I want it to be part of the community that I'm a part of, not realizing that the only reason I even heard My Chemical Romance is because they were getting popular. It's like, bro, you wouldn't have heard this band if they weren't popular. You don't do anything. You sit on your computer doing all your downloading. Yeah. So this is not new that people are doing this. This is not something that will change by talking about it on Twitter. I can't think of one thing that will change because you talked about it on Twitter.
No.
So I guess stop talking about it on Twitter. You're not doing nothing. You're accomplishing 0.0% of anything. Unless you are. I don't know. I hate to make broad statements like that. But the point is that talking about like where your music community is and like holding people accountable for like whether or not this community is correct or not is like, it doesn't fucking matter, man. Like music is completely based on taste. It's completely based on what you're into and what somebody else is into. And then you learn eventually one day that like, hey, we're just into different things and all of it has its merits and all of it's good or all of it's this. And you know, that's fucking it. So it's like, what, I don't even know what else there is to talk about on Twitter about all this shit, because it's like, no, like punk rock is what punk rock is to the people who believe that they want to be part of punk rock. That's it. If you're a person who says, I like emo, and they're like, well, it's not this emo or it's not this emo. It's like, who fucking cares, man? Like, I like this. It's called emo. People understand it as emo. Words are just context, and they're just ways that certain people communicate with one another. They don't actually mean anything, and it doesn't actually have any held value that changes because you think it's this and somebody else thinks it's different. Changes no value there. As long as the actions are the same, we're good.
One of the other primary things people were bringing up was the history and like the context of punk as a genre. And when you really look at it, you do have people who were pioneers like Blondie, who we see more as a pop icon. Mm-hmm. But if you were to look into her backstory and how she came up, it was very DIY punk, along with like New York Dolls, for example. Yeah. Sex Pistols is the most generic punk boy band because they were assembled
they were literally
by a record label.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about what's really punk and what isn't, don't look at Sex Pistols. Look at like Blondie and New York Dolls. Even as much as like I'm not a fan, and as much as most people are completely annoyed by her personality, Madonna was pretty punk during her time in like the late 70s, early 80s when she was trying to get her break in New York City too.
Yeah.
And we need to look at the ideologies like New York Dolls. If you don't know who New York Dolls are, they were very flamboyantly dressed dudes in a pop rock band, essentially. Mm-hmm. And that definitely helped with normalizing femininity with men and also dressing. And there's certain issues when it came to like, you know, LGBT rights as well. And when we look at punk in that sense, then yeah, we should be more accepting of these things. You should be anyway, because you're a fucking normal human being.
Yeah.
And we should accept people like that. There's no reason to not do that. So when we look at punk, yeah, we have these basis and ethos that came out of it. But when you keep trying to equate it to those who aren't really punk, it's going to throw everything into a fucking headspin. And that's a lot because people don't research the history of punk, and you just kind of just roll with it and what you're told. I don't blame you. A lot of people do that with almost any genre. Not everybody is like an ethnomusicologist and they're just going out reading books about the history of music. It's cool. It's fun. Do it if you want to do it, and you probably have the time. But to learn a little bit more about it.
But Lucy doesn't have the time to watch the TV shows she needs to watch, so who knows if you have time.
I don't. I just don't. But that's the big thing too. And I think as we have to kind of work to dispel, if you want to keep and make a new diverse and inclusive punk community, we have to look at how are we defining punk now? Is it a community? Is it an ideology? is it just going to be the traditional music that we hear as punk, or is it going to be all these other genres, which a lot of people are more open to now, especially when it comes to rap, that we're finally having more open dialogue.
Finally.
In that retrospect, finally, people are accepting it a little bit more. I think we need to really just like grip the sound gates on it and say, whatever, if it's punk and they're talking about these things and, you know, they want equality for all and all these other things, that's punk. And then we can define it further as, is it a community? Is it an ideology? How do we go forward from there? And then also in that way, we'll revive it, because I feel that it's just been kind of stagnated. It's not flatlined, but it's stagnated to the point where you're just kind of like, it's a little bit on life support. And you can't really say you're punk by being complicit with how it is, and how there are older punks who are now saying things like Johnny Rotten, like all these people are snowflakes and all this stuff like that. You have to still kind of be actively fighting against it and being like, hey, no, like this scene and community is supposed to be accepting and not calling people snowflakes. Like, you can cry if you need to cry.
That's pretty much just a pretty easy thing to do.
That's pretty much, you know, it's easy to do.
A fucking
it's
snowflake.
Fine. Yeah, just don't do that. It's just rude, because, you know, you'll say something back to them and then they'll be upset, and then they don't like, you know, counter arguments.
Yeah.
You know, hypocrisy runs real deep for some people. But I think when it comes to punk, and then they also started getting to DIY, and I said, absolutely fucking no. We are not stepping in that.
No one cares.
Garbage fire. That is DIY right now.
Listen,
That's
man.
a completely other topic.
If DIY is just meaning like I'm doing it on my own, I don't need anybody else's help. Like I don't need a lot of money. I'm just doing all the work because I enjoy the work and I want to make something successful on my own. It's like, yeah, but like that's also like, I don't know, fucking building computers. That's also like all these different things throughout history that have always been people that are just like, I'm going to do it myself because I'm not like, if we wanted to make our own podcast network, that's technically DIY. We're just doing everything on our own because we don't want the money from a bigger entity than ourselves. I don't really get where that makes you more special than somebody else. It's just a choice that you're making. If I wanted to make my own job instead of applying to a job, that's the same idea. It's like, I would rather run my own company than join somebody else's company. I don't really understand where that puts you in a holier than thou position in music or in business or in any other realm of this sort of thing, because like I think a lot of bands that are quote unquote DIY are like, well, I don't want to be a part of this machine. I don't want to be a part of your system, man. And it's like, dude, just music makes no money. Music doesn't make no money. So like, who cares if you're the guy making no money or if you're the guy making no money?
Right. It's like, okay, do you want somebody else to manage you not making money, or do you want to just do it on your own, not making
and
money?
not making any
whatever.
money? It really like
whatever works for you.
Imagine if you were like, Dom said like, yeah, I decided not to sign, or they decided not to sign me or whatever. It's like, imagine if you were like constantly being put up for record labels and just chose not to sign because you're like, the idea of signing takes away, they won't give me the thing that I want. They won't give me the value that I desire. Totally different story if you then are building up to your own value, and that value is monetary, that value is success, that value is whatever it is for you. And you don't have to then pretend that like you're better than everybody else because you did the work on your own, even though you could have done the work with somebody else. I don't know. It's like, I don't assume that a lot of people who are DIY have a lot of opportunities outside of it. I don't feel like they're pursuing the opportunities outside of it. I feel like it's almost like a fuck you. We don't have to be a part of your thing, when it's like nobody wanted you to be a part of the thing anyway. Like, I don't know.
It's like, hey, nobody was asking you to conform.
Yeah.
And I understand like the punk attitude behind it of, I don't need to be a part of the system. Okay, cool.
Yeah, then don't.
Nobody was asking you to do it.
Like every movement and everything comes out of something, and it's generally organic. It's not usually forced. It's not usually made. It's usually just an organic creation out of something that is occurring. A cultural movement, a personal movement, just a societal movement, like whatever it is, like there's something that happens that pushes people into a certain realm and they're doing something that they're doing. Maybe they're doing it different. Maybe they're taking influences from something else and they're creating something new out of it. That's all it is. And it's all it ever will be. It will always just be that. There will always be business. There will always be a market for it. There will always be people who are like, I love the idea of working for other people, that I just like, I would love to have a team. I would love to have people that are helping me get to where I want to be. And I would be fine if they monetize something that is essentially out of a movement. Writing protest music and getting signed to a label does not make you non-DIY. It doesn't make you non-punk. It just means that you have the access to a team, access to resources, access to the ability to do the other things you want to do in order to create the thing that you want to create. And I think this argument just comes out of people who don't realize that like music will always grow this way organically. And there will also be people who always want to have the resources. So you do what you do and you feel that you are good doing what you do, and you let the other people who do what they do for them to do that, to them.
There's a lot of do's in there.
You know what? Do I why? Do I why? And with that, the news has been given unto you. And that is our episode for this week's episode of this episode of the Emo Social Club podcast episode.
Wow, I didn't know how many episodes we had there. Would you care to reiterate that?
I'm trying to get us to 1,000 episodes in one episode.
So we can submit to the podcast networks because you know that's exactly what we need to be doing.
Yeah. I think it's actually just say episode 1,000 times.
Like,
I think I'm reading this
like a
wrong.
tongue twister. How many times can you say episode?
1,000 minimum to get on a network. Anyway, thank you for checking us out on this week's episode of the Emo Social Club podcast. We appreciate you. We love you. As with every week, I'll continue to be Brian.
And with every week going forward too, I'm still Lizzie.
So goodbye. Woo. Podcast.